Good morning and welcome to GrainTV for Monday, April 16, 2012. To my left is Logan Burgess and I'm Brock Schimino. The agricultural markets are down across the board in the overnight. Corn was down 6 1/4, beans off 10 1/4, wheat off 6 to 7 depending on which contract you're looking at. And Logan, there's a couple things driving us lower in the overnight.
Yeah, it seemed like the Chinese markets in the overnight session were really pushing this thing lower. We saw out of the dollar in exchange, corn, soybeans, and soy meal all traded lower. Soybean on that front month contract was actually down about 1%, so that certainly didn't help out the U.S. futures in the overnight electronic trade. I think that was kind of pushed lower here by that weaker than expected GDP growth number we saw come out late in the last week. Also, though, we see improved weather projections moving through this week. As we know, if we take a look here at this map provided by our friends over at Planalytics, that western part of the Corn Belt is still locked in a pretty severe drought in some places. The place to really keep an eye on here is northwestern Iowa, southern Minnesota, and as we were saying last week, we've really seen this start to creep into areas of Illinois. That's really in sharp contrast to what we're seeing out east in areas of Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, where the soil moisture is quite good right now.
Yeah, and that is interesting to note that we are starting to dry up in the northern part of Illinois. And if you take a look at how we've changed from the last reporting period, we've seen an expanding dry moisture content move across much of the planting area of the Midwest. Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, all very dry right now. It is interesting to note, though, our friends down the southern plains that have their hard red winter wheat progressing along pretty nicely right now. They have received beneficial rains, so we continue to see their moisture content change to the positive side, actually improve as we move through this growing season.
We did see conditions kind of dry out here for most of the Corn Belt, since the last reporting period by Planalytics here. But if we take a look here at where we sit right now on the percent soil moisture capacity scale, on this scale here, 100 represents the soil is completely saturated. As you can see, as we were saying, out east in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, we're nearing 100 in a lot of areas. But take a look here in northwestern Iowa, southern Minnesota, that scale is at about 50 here, and as you move into the Dakotas, it gets even lower. We saw on March 30th the Dakotas picked up a lot of corn acres, so this will be an important situation to keep an eye on here as we move through the growing season here. That's kind of going to wrap up the first half of the show. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back to watch the markets trade live.
GrainHedge is more than just futures trading. Clients receive our cash grain optimizer showing spot and forward bids within 200 miles of your farm. We take into account your trucking costs to find your best-selling opportunity. We provide in-depth basis mapping, historical basis and cash price charting. Every day we show you your best price and if it meets your profit goals. Contact GrainHedge today to get started.
Welcome back to GrainTV. The markets are open in Chicago, so let's turn over to the Fire Tip trading software for the live quotes. Looks like corn is down 5.5 cents, beans are down 12.5 cents, wheat is off 6 to 8 cents, depending if you're watching Chicago or Kansas City. And it looks like, once again, the soybean market is the leader of the downside. We saw the dollar exchange sell off in the overnight. It looks like we're following through early on in this session this morning.
Yeah, Brock, well, once again, as you said, soybeans are the leader to the downside. One thing that we've really been keeping an eye on here is the managed money position in soybeans right now. Take a look at this chart. As you can see, they're extremely net long in soybeans right now. The blue line here is the managed money longs. The yellow line here is the managed money short positions. And as you can see, this thing has climbed well higher from a net long standpoint than we were even last September. So actually this week we saw them add about 8,000 long positions to that net long in the Friday Commitment of Traders report. Now the Commitment of Traders is kind of a trailing indicator. It shows the market composition on last Tuesday's action. So for short-term market moves, it's not really going to tell you much, but for long-term trends in the market, it's a good thing to keep an eye on. And we did see a little bit of a change in this week's report. If we take a look here at how the ratio actually performed this week, you can see that we actually pulled back a little bit. On the vertical axis here is the ratio of longs to shorts. So on here, 30 would represent 30 longs for every 1 short that managed money is holding. We kind of peaked out there last week, and in the most recent report here, we saw that pull back a little bit. So they did add to the net long, but the pace at which they were adding has actually slowed down a little bit here. Brock, that's kind of what we're seeing for the managed money position in soybeans. I know there should be some news out of Europe that might be a little bit supportive here to the U.S. Wheat market.
Yeah, we saw lots of chatter across the news wires this morning about European wheat situations and their winter wheat crops. And as we know, last winter they had a tough time with some very cold conditions. That they planted actually in very dry conditions. So we haven't seen their good to excellent ratings be very good to start out the season. So that's going to really support our markets here domestically. And if you take a look at what we saw come out of France over the weekend, wheat was actually sitting at about 62% good to excellent. Last year at this time, they were 75% good to excellent. So that shows that there's a significant decline in the actual conditions of these crops over in Europe right now.
Yeah, certainly. Well, the European crop not off to a great start. The U.S. wheat crop, though, looks to be really off on a tear, specifically at Kansas City wheat down in the Southern Plains. We'll be getting crop progress coming out this afternoon. Follow us on Twitter, @GrainTV is where you can find us. We'll be tweeting when crop progress comes out. I think that kind of wraps up our show here for Monday morning. Thanks for joining us here on GrainTV. Have a great rest of your day.